What's up, everybody? It is October, which means it's Villains Month here on Variant, and I can think of no better way to kick things off than with Absolute Evil #1 by Al Ewing. We have been covering the Absolute Universe since its rollout in the All-In special in October of last year, and let me tell you something, whether you're talking about Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, Flash, Green Lantern, Absolute Wonder Woman, or Martian Manhunter, they have all been fantastic in their own right, and we have all been waiting to see when they would come together to form the Absolute Justice League. Well, we finally got the Absolute Justice League, but it is not what we thought. And in all honesty, it's actually better than what we were expecting. So let's just dive into the issue and find out what's going on. All right, so page 1 opens up in 1951, where we are introduced to Absolute Hawkman, which is cool enough by itself. But he's sitting in front of a government committee telling them, "Gentlemen of the House Un-American Activities Committee, you called me to this closed-door session to answer certain questions. I've thought long and hard about the answers. During my covert work as the Hawkman, my true identity remained my own secret. Now you say I have to give that secret up. My face, my name, my life. I do consider these my own business, but sometimes business takes a back seat to pleasure. And you know what? It'll be a real pleasure to inform on the commie rats nibbling away at this great country. What do you want to know, boys?" But on the next page, we are taken back to the present, where we are introduced to Absolute Green Arrow, who up to this point we didn't even know existed. So in the first 2 pages of this issue, we have been introduced to Absolute Hawkman and Absolute Green Arrow. Not a bad start. Anyway, Absolute Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, is on the phone with Roy Harper while doing target practice in his Arrow cave. But as he walks into the next room, he tells Roy that he's going all in on his decision to become a vigilante. He tells him, "I've got everything I need down here. Archery range, computer setup like you wouldn't believe, a garage, that convertible I designed." And while we're only getting Oliver Queen's side of this conversation, it is clear that Roy is trying to talk him down. But Oliver just tells him, "What, I'm not allowed hobbies? I asked you if you wanted in on this, man. What's with the 3rd degree here?" He then responds to something Roy tells him, "Yeah, I'm going after Jubal Slade. Look, I told you about his island, right? All those private flights, just kids. Because he's bought the cops, Roy. He's bought the courts. The system was built for guys like this. I gotta do something. Somebody's gotta do something. All this stuff I have, this money, what does it do? What do I do? What are we actually doing here? Any of us? Because something is killing us all, man. Some moral cancer is rotting us inside, rotting our souls." Oliver then takes it up a notch and starts yelling, "Don't tell me to calm down, Roy. I mean it. You can be in or out, but I'm serious. This is the way I make a difference in the world. This is the direction I was always headed." So Oliver Queen is telling Roy that he's about to go after Jubal Slade hard, who in the Absolute Universe is something of an Epstein-type character, rather than just a slumlord, which is how we typically know him in the DC Universe. But here's where things get nuts, because on the next page, we are taken to an office building where we find Hector Hammond, who is on the cell phone with Jubal Slade. And Jubal is calling because he's running into trouble with Oliver and he wants Hector to do something about it. But Hector is being super dismissive and doesn't think much about it, as he tells Jubal, sometimes that's the way it goes. A guy turns 40, gets a gray hair, and gets ideas. I bought a Maserati, Queen grew a conscience. It happens. But take a breath here. What can he actually do? What's his next move? He talks big, sure, but it's Ollie. He doesn't want results. He wants to feel righteous, and nothing feels more righteous than losing. I don't know, 5 million? It's chump change. Just trust me here, Jubes. I know this guy. Ollie Queen is never going to surprise anybody. But as he's on this phone call with Slade, he's also trying to walk through security in this office building, and they demand his phone from him. He gripes and complains, but ultimately gives him his phone and walks through. Then when security escorts him to the conference room where he's expected for a meeting, we flip to the next panel to see the absolute villains all sitting around a table. And I'm talking about the final bosses in the Absolute Universe so far. Ra's al Ghul, Veronica Cale, Eleanor Thawne, and the Joker. So already you can see where this is going. This is going to be the Absolute Universe's version of the Justice League. It was right in front of our face the entire time. Everything has been in reverse in the Absolute Universe, so it makes so much sense that the Justice League in the Absolute Universe would be made up of villains. Anyway, Veronica Cale leads off the meeting by saying, "Glad you could finally join us. Veronica Cale, National Security Advisor. I'm the boss. You had something to say?" And she's referring to the way he was complaining to security outside the door. But it also implies that this is the first time they are all meeting in person. Anyway, Hector Hammond just continues to be sarcastic and says, "If we're doing coffee orders, I'll take a macchiato, sweetheart." But Ra's al Ghul, who I have to tell you is probably my favorite villain in the Absolute Universe so far, he says, "No, this is not a room for games. It's not for play. Speak of work or do not speak." But Hector Hammond does not seem intimidated, and he just fires back, "Who do you think you are?" But Ra's lowers his shades and says, "I am Ra's al Ghul. If you do not know what that means, be glad and be silent." Which pretty much sums up why this guy is my favorite villain in the Absolute Universe. He's like an immortal Viking warlord. It's amazing. Anyway, Hector says, "I was being rhetorical, you putz." Now the Joker's just sitting there quiet, and Dr. Thawne chimes in in saying, "I have to side with Mr. Al Ghul on this. Our time is more valuable than any resource on Earth, Hammond. Far too precious to waste on your little jokes." Then the Joker speaks up for the very first time saying, "Agreed, I don't enjoy jokes." Which again is the total opposite from the main DC universe. It's just such a smart idea. But Hector, who is clearly not interested in making friends, says, "Yeah, I know who you are, laughing boy." To which Eleanor Thawne says, "If we all know who we are, can we get on with this? I've got work to do." So Veronica Cale takes over and starts to explain the reason for this meeting. And we get reference flashbacks while she begins to say, "Thank you, Dr. Thawne. Let's begin." New York, 1939. Chemist Wesley Dodds gets rich off his patents from improved anesthetic compounds. Soon after, a masked detective called the Sandman makes waves in the society pages, armed with a non-lethal sleep gas. Wesley Dodds is a young, idealistic romantic. It's not hard to put two and two together. Even before Dodds is found shot dead in his Sandman suit, his basement laboratory's been ransacked. A year later, the US military acquires some new and very lethal nerve gas weapons. Was that lethal gas brewed from Dodds' stolen notes? Ask the conspiracy theorists. Did it win us the war? Ask the historians. They'll say yes. Then on the next page, she continues to say, 1942, Gotham City. Ted Grant, a professional boxer, is framed for murder by small-time hoods. Grant's young. He's romantic. He puts on a cat costume, beats the crap out of them, clears his name. He calls himself the Wildcat. The neighborhood eats it up. So he busts some more small-time hoods, then medium-time hoods, working his way up. On a stakeout, he overhears a factory inspector taking a bribe from a munitions magnate to look the other way on safety standards. And then he comes into $50,000, tax-free. And that's the end of Wildcat. Grant buys him a gym in Schenectady, trains a couple of champions, dies peacefully in his sleep, age 81. 16 people die in workplace accidents in the factory over the next 5 years, making that gas I mentioned, the one that won us the war. So maybe taking the money was the most heroic thing Wildcat ever did. Now at this point, you might be wondering, between Sandman and Wildcat, where is she going with all this? But it doesn't stop there. Veronica goes on to say, 1951, Los Angeles, Iron Monroe, a movie stuntman and a real freak of nature. Rumor had it he could stop a bullet at 50 yards and outrun a locomotive. He decides he wants to fight a never-ending battle for truth and justice. But she continues, the never-ending battle seems to involve a lot of socialist meetings. He's called before the House Un-American Activities Committee in a special closed-doors session around the same time as a couple of other adventurers of the period, including Hawkman, who we saw on the first page. But unlike Hawkman, Monroe refuses to name names, calls McCarthy a demagogue. That's the end of him. Within a year, he's living in a lonely shack in the Nevada desert, which is accidentally targeted for a chemical weapons test. Someone filed the wrong paperwork, apparently. Monroe's lungs weren't as tough as the rest of him, but they were just as red. Cale then starts to bring the point together as she tells them these are 3 out of 100 examples. Throughout history, there have been individuals who acted outside the status quo, and the status quo has dealt with those individuals one way or another. Who remembers them now? So it goes, and so it has always gone, until now. She then pulls up an image of the Tetracide event that we saw in the Absolute Wonder Woman title, and she tells them the Gateway event, so called because it took place in Gateway City, and because it apparently opened the door to a whole new bag of craziness. That thing is called a Tetracide. It was the second most dangerous creature to appear that day. She then pulls up an image of Absolute Wonder Woman and says, this is the most dangerous. She arrived here from hell. She deafened a city. She became a Gorgon, turned the Tetracide to stone, then destroyed it with one punch. She also, and this is the part I find most concerning, took operational command of the scene. Troops on the ground deferred to her. Based on what exactly? Her bearings? Her tone? Mind control? Why was she not arrested? At the same time, word spreads of another creature, this one male, violently disrupting Lazarus Corp's operation in Brazil, shrugging off artillery that would have blown a hole right through Iron Monroe, melting tanks with its eyes, following which a trained Peacemaker agent ignores the Brainiac algorithm's recommendations and writes her after-action report directly in somewhat poetic detail. Now, if you've been keeping up with the Absolute Superman title, you know that Ra's al Ghul is extremely interested in Absolute Superman, and in fact wants to take him under his wing and make him his quote-unquote son, the son of the demon, as he's calling him. So at this point, he chimes in and says, are you more interested in how the report was written than the contents? But Veronica just callously responds, it's indicative of a trend, as she simultaneously pulls up an image of Absolute Batman, which is just a great homage to The Dark Knight Returns. She then continues to say, Gotham City, this one is human, we think, but he seems to redefine what human can be. He appears and vanishes like a ghost. He somehow built his resources into the city itself. He wears an axe blade on his chest, for God's sake. We then get a close-up on the Joker's face as he very calmly and quietly says, he didn't take the money. Veronica responds, yes, exactly. Unlike Ted Grant, he didn't take the money. We then get images of Absolute Green Lantern, Flash, and Martian Manhunter, as Veronica continues by saying, what else? A vast alien object falls on the town of Evergreen. A second gateway event, less telegenic this time, thank God. It helps that the object isn't around anymore, but we know who the survivors of the event are, and they've been altered. Meanwhile, a military experiment at the Fort Fox base goes haywire. Again, there was at least one survivor who remains altered and on the run. And what other beings are out there? What forms do they take? Are they even corporeal? We don't know. We can't know. So at least at this point, it seems they are not yet aware of Absolute Martian Manhunter, and that may be due to his telepathic powers, but we'll have to see as this continues to unfold. Anyway, Veronica continues by saying, but we do know that things are escalating. These new threats are more dangerous than any before them, and the greatest danger they pose is not what they can do, but what they can convince others to do, what they can inspire. Peacekeeper agents ignoring protocol, military officers taking orders from civilians, seasoned cops refusing to open fire on a man dressed as a bat. There is order in this world. There is a hierarchy. These things make a mockery of that. They could topple everything if allowed to, if we allow them to. And this next part really solidifies all this dialogue from Veronica Cale, which Al Ewing is absolutely crushing in this issue, as she continues to say, previously we could all meet these threats individually, but I no longer believe that's possible. You all have private resources, as do I. As National Security Advisor and Director of Area 41, I have additional government resources. But if we don't put all those together, if we don't work together, these monsters will take our world apart. So as far as a globalist cabal goes, she really nailed her pitch, but Hector Hammond did not think so. He just says, no sale. I get it, Uncle Sam's hard up these days, so the begging bowl comes with a scare story, but nobody's scared, Toots. Because the point of that little speech was that people like us have always handled people like them, and frankly, I don't need any help now. However, Ra's al Ghul responds, I think you do. Hector just fires back, yeah? Well, you think wrong. Got rid of the Green Lantern, didn't I? If I've got a problem, if any of my friends have a problem, I do not need Lazarus Corp to help solve it. Capiche? Now, for those of you who may not know who Hector Hammond is, this is probably a good time to point out that he is an OG Green Lantern villain. So there's a very good reason why he's sitting around this table in the Absolute Universe. Regardless, Ra's al Ghul is not playing around, and he says, I think it's a good time, Cale. To which she replies, me too. Send in Mr. Hall, please. And on the next page, we see Absolute Hawkman walk in after having bludgeoned Oliver Queen to death and slam his dead corpse on the table right in front of all of them. Hawkman then looks at Hector Hammond and says, questions? The shocked Hammond then jumps away from the table and Ollie's body while Ra's al Ghul says, that is how we solve problems, Mr. Hammond. Not in a month, in a day, no sitting around the table, no chump change, no games, and no jokes. Dr. Thawne, who is clearly on the fence on how this was handled, then chimes in and says, so was this murder or covert assassination? Is this a threat of some kind? Blackmail? What's the point, Cale? To which Cale responds, call it a demonstration. What power can do for money, what money can do for power. How difficult is it for you to get intel on your little escaped experiment from Fort Fox, Eleanor? How much effort did it take for Hammond to be first on the scene in Evergreen? How many millions? How many favors? Next time, and there will be a next time, you could each make one phone call. But Thawne fires back, unless Lazarus calls first, I suppose, then it's a bidding war. Frankly, I still agree with Hammond. As convenient as an alliance might be for you, I don't see the need to be in each other's pockets. It's not as if we're friends. And this, my friends, is where Joker stands up and finally begins to speak. And right out of the gate, Al Ewing does such a good job of making you feel the intimidation and the particular respect that the Joker garners in the room. He says, no, not friends. May I have the floor? And like I said, as soon as he begins to speak, everyone shuts up. Nobody says a word, so he just says, thank you. I'm going to share some recent research from a particle physics laboratory under my aegis. Needless to say, this is proprietary information. If any of what I'm about to tell you reaches any ears outside this room, I'll take it seriously. And as he says this, we get a close-up on the glasses Ra's al Ghul has been wearing this entire time. Then on the next panel, we realize that he's been wearing these glasses so that Brainiac can observe the meeting remotely. And even Brainiac voices his respect for the Joker as he just says, duly noted. Anyway, the Joker goes on to explain the Higgs boson is known in popular science as the God particle. It's considered by many to be the final piece of the puzzle of quantum mechanics, the one elementary particle that confirms how the universe works. They're wrong. Last year we found a better one, the true end of the search. We call it the Omega particle. Studying it has revealed fundamental truths about the world we live in. Then on the next page, we see a bunch of scientists inside of a Hadron Collider staring at a screen with Darkseid's Omega symbol on it, alongside narration from the Joker that continues to say, this particle forms the basic building blocks of all creation. And now we know how it behaves, how it reacts, what it reacts to. This particle, this energy, has a spiritual dimension to it, a moral dimension. A disbelieving Dr. Thawne chimes in and says, please, you're telling us a subatomic particle understands good and evil? You can't possibly be serious. But Ra's al Ghul lowers his glasses and tells her, no, he doesn't joke. He never jokes. Listen. A now noticeably annoyed Joker says, the fundamental forces of this universe trend in one direction, and now we know that includes societal forces. Gravity distorts the universe, and so the river runs. The curtain falls. The yoke is heavy. We accept that man is tethered to earth. We do not believe a man can fly. With this discovery, we must now accept that there is likewise a moral gravity pulling down, keeping everything that is in its place. Existence is ordered and ordained. Water flows downhill. Those who have, and those who have not, have not. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Some hold the winning cards, and some clutch at a handful of jokers. This is not chance. This is not accident. This is design. The sore losers in the game of life see their fate woven into the fabric of creation and rail against it and call it doom. There's a philosophical term for that perspective, the just world fallacy. And imagine being so twisted, so filled with hate, so paralyzed by fear. Imagine thinking it a fallacy that the world could be just. But the world is just. We have evidence, not of doom, but of a natural order worked upon the world by a higher power. If spoiled little anarchists like the late Mr. Queen here would stand against that order, I call that injustice. And injustice must be fought. Chaos must be fought. We must fight it. And how can we fail? God is on our side. So, are we friends? We are not. To claim friendship with any of you would insult you. To succumb to friendship is against the moral order, but we can be allies. And this, my friends, is where it all comes together, as the Joker says. Here in this room, our watchtower, looking down from high above the herd, we can be in league. Between us, we can ensure the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And again, he's referring to a dark side-driven form of justice, an evil form of justice. We then see Oliver's body being dragged out of the room as the Joker says, a toast then to an ordered world and to our Justice League, as we get a full-blown look at the Hall of Justice in the Absolute Universe. And it is a dark-looking Hall of Justice at that. But this is such an incredible twist for the Justice League in the Absolute Universe, and one that I don't think many of us were expecting. I know I, for one, was not looking for this book from Al Ewing to introduce the Absolute Justice League. So not only was it a great twist, it was really a surprise drop, and it was brilliant. And it makes perfect sense for the villains to make up the Justice League because, again, this universe was created by Darkseid himself. Like I said before, it was kind of right there in front of our face the entire time, and I'm really curious to see how Bane fits into all of this. But here's the thing, the comic doesn't even end there, because on the next page we are taken back to Brainiac, who we see talking to Mirror Master. That's right, it's the Mirror Master that was helping him and giving him the ability to see and hear inside the room at that meeting. In fact, it seems Ra's al Ghul had nothing to do with Brainiac being present at all. This was all Brainiac's doing, as he says to Mirror Master, fascinating data, just fascinating. And without your methods, I'm not sure I could have acquired it. So thank you for that, Mirror Master. To which Mirror Master replies, I didn't come here for thanks, Brainiac. I need your analysis. I need to know how it all connects, here and in my mirror, how it connects and how it reflects. To which Brainiac tells him, indeed, a measure of balance suits my own goals. Hammond balances Ra's and the Hawkman. Their egos can focus on one another. And Thawne's skepticism matches Kale, the true believer. But this man who doesn't joke, we need to reflect him, learn his secrets, negate his threat. There's a name I recall from my glimpse into your mirror world, someone worth investing in. I think for the Justice League to be complete, it needs one more member. And on the next page, we are taken to what looks like a farm as a couple is sitting on a porch drinking their cups of tea. The man says, sunset and green tea. It's a wonderful life, isn't it? His wife responds, well, I certainly think so. The Shadowed Man then goes on to say, it's strange. I was an angry young man, Dora, envious of others for their power, for their popularity, even their looks. But right here in this moment, I can't think of a single thing I want. She then starts to flirt with him, but his phone starts to ring and he says, hold that thought. It'll be just a moment, darling. And on the final page of this issue, we get a full look of this man as he answers the phone saying, this is Lex Luthor speaking. How can I be of help? So we have finally been introduced to the Absolute Universe version of Lex Luthor, and it could not have come at a better time. And like the Brainiac said, that means that he is going to be the final piece to the puzzle to the Absolute Justice League, or Absolute Justice as it's been dubbed. And purely based on how terrifying and absolutely insane all of the villains have been so far in this universe, I cannot wait to see how this dude evolves. Does Brainiac's comments mean that Lex is going to be a more balanced voice of reason in the room to counteract the Joker, or is he going to become a true strongman? But guys, this was an incredible issue that you absolutely need to to read for yourself, and I cannot wait to see how this continues to roll out in the Absolute Universe and throughout the KO event, especially because we have gotten a couple of preludes and we know that the Absolute Universe is about to collide with the main DC universe. But what did you guys think of this issue and the twist for the Absolute Justice League, as well as the introduction of Lex Luthor, Mirror Master, and several other characters? Let us know down in the comments. Other than that, we will see you next time when we talk about all things comics.